German Shepherd gives birth to a rare puppy. What happens next leaves everyone in tears. Warning: this story will touch your heart in ways you never expected. Get your tissues ready for an unforgettable journey of love, hope, and miracles. Don't forget to share where you're watching from in the comments below. The night air hung heavy with an unsettling stillness as Sage Mitchell stood at her kitchen window, her fingers wrapped tightly around a cup of chamomile tea that had long gone cold. Something felt different tonight, wrong even. Her rescued German Shepherd, Nova, who was heavily pregnant, had been acting strange all day. Usually playful and energetic despite her condition, Nova had spent hours pacing the wooden floors of their modest farmhouse, her nails clicking against the boards in an endless rhythm that set Sage's nerves on edge. "What's wrong, girl?" Sage whispered, watching as Nova's ears twitched at phantom sounds. The bond between them ran deeper than mere owner and pet. It was forged in the flames of survival. 2 years ago, on a rain-soaked night much like this one, Sage had found Nova abandoned on the side of Highway 23, her body broken and bleeding. The vet had given her a 20% chance of survival, but Sage had seen something in those amber eyes, a fierce will to live that matched her own. Nova's whimper cut through Sage's memories like a knife. The pregnant shepherd froze mid-pace, her body tensing as she locked eyes with her human. In that moment, time seemed to stop. Then Nova let out a heart-wrenching howl that shattered the night's silence and collapsed to the floor. "Nova!" Sage dropped her mug, barely registering the sound of ceramic shattering as she rushed to her dog's side. The shepherd's sides were heaving, her breaths coming in sharp, pained gasps. "It's okay, sweet girl. I'm here. I'm right here." But even as she spoke the words, fear gripped Sage's heart. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Sage had delivered puppies before. She ran a small rescue operation out of her farmhouse. But something about this felt different. Nova's cries weren't just those of labor. They carried an undertone of terror that made Sage's blood run cold. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, quickly dialing Dr. Marcus, the local vet who had helped save Nova 2 years ago. "The puppies are coming," Sage explained, trying to keep her voice steady as Nova writhed beside her. "But something's wrong. I can feel it." "I'm on my way, Doctor," Marcus promised. "Just stay calm. Remember what we practiced." But as Sage hung up and turned back to Nova, she noticed something that made her heart stop. Blood, too much blood, was pooling beneath her beloved dog. Nova's eyes, usually so bright and alert, were growing dim with each contraction. "Don't you dare!" Sage whispered fiercely, pressing her forehead against Nova's. "Don't you dare leave me. We've been through too much together." Her voice broke as tears began to fall. "Remember that night I found you? Everyone said to let you go, that it would be kinder. But we proved them wrong, didn't we? We're fighters, you and I. So fight now. Fight for your babies." Nova's only response was another agonized whimper, but her tail thumped weakly against the floor. Once, twice. A promise? The next hour passed in a blur of blood, sweat, and tears. Sage worked tirelessly, supporting Nova through each contraction, whispering encouragement, even as her own fear threatened to overwhelm her. The first puppy came, a strong, healthy male with Nova's coloring. Then a second and a third, each crying out with healthy lungs as Sage cleaned them and placed them near their mother's warm belly. But Nova wasn't done. Her body tensed again, and this time her cry was different, primal, filled with a terror that made Sage's heart stop. As the fourth puppy emerged, Sage understood why. It was tiny, impossibly so, its fur a strange, mottled color she'd never seen before. But it wasn't just the size or color that made Sage's breath catch in her throat. The puppy wasn't moving, wasn't breathing. "No," Sage whispered, her hands trembling as she picked up the lifeless form. It was cold to the touch, its tiny heart silent beneath her fingers. Nova raised her head weakly, trying to reach her smallest pup, her eyes filled with a knowledge and sorrow that seemed almost human. Just then, headlights swept across the windows as Dr. Marcus's truck pulled into the driveway. But as Sage looked down at the motionless puppy in her hands, she knew with devastating certainty that he was already too late. Dr. Marcus burst through the door, medical bag in hand, his boots leaving muddy prints on the wooden floor. One look at Sage's tear-streaked face told him everything. He knelt beside her, his experienced hands already reaching for the tiny puppy. "Give him to me," he said quietly, but Sage couldn't move. Her fingers were frozen around the cold, still form. Nova watched them with desperate eyes, her whole body trembling as she tried to reach her smallest pup. "Sage," Dr. Marcus said more firmly, "let me try." With shaking hands, Sage transferred the tiny body to the vet. Dr. Marcus worked quickly, his movements precise as he cleared the puppy's airways and began chest compressions with just 2 fingers. The puppy was too small for anything more. 1 minute passed. 2. Nova's whimpers filled the room. A mother's grief made sound. "Please," Sage whispered, her hand clutching Nova's fur. "Please, please, please." Then, like a miracle breaking through the darkness, the tiniest gasp echoed in the quiet room. The puppy's chest moved, just barely, just once, but it moved. Dr. Marcus didn't pause, continuing his careful ministrations until finally, the puppy took another breath. And another. "He's fighting," Dr. Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "But Sage, you need to understand, this puppy, he's different." As if to emphasize the point, the puppy's fur caught the lamplight, revealing its strange, almost silvery sheen. His body was barely half the size of his siblings, his legs noticeably twisted. But he was alive. Against all odds, he was alive. "He has severe congenital defects," Dr. Marcus explained gently as he examined the puppy more thoroughly. "His heart is weak, his lungs aren't fully developed, and these deformities—" He gestured to the puppy's twisted legs. "The chances of him surviving even the next 24 hours are—" He trailed off, but Sage could read the truth in his eyes. Nova suddenly let out a low growl, not threatening, but protective. She dragged herself closer, her body still weak from the difficult birth, and gently nosed her smallest pup. The puppy responded to his mother's touch with a weak squeak that brought fresh tears to Sage's eyes. "He's not going anywhere," Sage said firmly, remembering that rainy night 2 years ago, when everyone had told her to give up on Nova. "If he's fighting, we're fighting with him." Dr. Marcus sighed, but there was a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. "Then we need to act fast. He'll need to be tube-fed. He's too weak to nurse on his own. He'll need constant warmth, round-the-clock monitoring. His siblings could accidentally crush him, so he'll need to be separated, but still close enough to Nova. The next few days will be critical." As if understanding the gravity of the situation, Nova began to carefully clean her tiny pup, her tongue gentle against his fragile body. The puppy's silvery fur began to fluff up slightly under her attention, making him look like a tiny, broken angel. "Luna," Sage whispered suddenly. Everyone looked at her. "His name is Luna because he came to us on this strange, magical night, and because—" She touched his silvery fur gently. "Because he shines like moonlight." Dr. Marcus nodded as he prepared an IV line for Nova. "Luna it is, but Sage ... He paused, making sure he had her full attention. "You need to prepare yourself. Even with the best care, puppies like Luna, they often don't make it past the first few days. And if he does survive, he'll need extensive medical care for the rest of his life. The costs alone—" "Money doesn't matter," Sage interrupted. "Nothing matters except giving him a chance." She looked down at Luna, so tiny he could fit in her palm, his breath still shallow and irregular, but there, still there. "Everyone deserves a chance to prove the world wrong." Nova rested her head against Sage's leg, her eyes never leaving her smallest pup. Outside, the strange stillness of the night had given way to a gentle rain, its soft patter against the windows like a lullaby. But for Sage, Nova, and the tiny fighter they named Luna, the night was far from over. In fact, their real journey was just beginning. The next 72 hours tested every ounce of strength Sage possessed. She converted her living room into an intensive care unit, setting up a heated blanket inside a padded box for Luna, positioned close enough to Nova that mother and pup could still see and smell each other. The other puppies, now named Storm, Thunder, and Rain, grew stronger by the hour, their robust cries demanding milk and attention. But Luna remained silent, his tiny body fighting for every breath. Sage hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a stretch since that first night. Every 2 hours, she prepared the special formula, Doctor. Marcus had left, carefully feeding Luna through a tiny tube. The process was painstaking and terrifying. One wrong move could send the formula into his lungs instead of his stomach. Her hands shook with exhaustion, but she couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not with Luna's life hanging by such a fragile thread. Nova proved to be an extraordinary mother, dividing her attention between her thriving puppies and her struggling one with an intelligence that brought tears to Sage's eyes. Whenever Luna's breathing became more labored, Nova would alert Sage with a specific whine they had both come to recognize as their emergency signal. Several times, that maternal instinct had saved Luna's life. On the third night, as Sage sat cross-legged on the floor, preparing Luna's midnight feeding, her best friend Claire arrived unannounced, carrying grocery bags and a worried expression. "You haven't been answering your phone," Claire said softly, taking in Sage's disheveled appearance and the makeshift puppy hospital that had taken over the living room. "Mrs. Peterson from next door called me, said she hadn't seen you leave the house in days." Sage barely looked up from measuring the formula. "I can't leave them. Luna needs feeding every 2 hours, and his temperature drops so quickly if the heating pad shifts even slightly." Her hands trembled as she tried to fill the tiny syringe, spilling precious drops of formula. Claire gently took the syringe from her friend's shaking fingers. "When was the last time you ate? Or showered?" "I dot." Sage started to answer, then stopped, realizing she couldn't remember. Nova raised her head from where she lay with her other puppies, letting out a soft whine that seemed to echo Claire's concern. "You're no good to any of them if you collapse," Claire said firmly, already moving toward the kitchen. "I'm making you something to eat, and then you're going to take a shower while I watch Luna. Dr. Marcus showed you how to tube feed, right? You can show me." Tears welled in Sage's eyes, from exhaustion, from fear, from gratitude. She wasn't sure which. "Claire, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, I'm telling." Claire's voice softened as she looked at tiny Luna, his silvery fur rising and falling with each shallow breath. "Besides, someone needs to document this miracle." "Miracle?" Sage whispered. "Look at him, Sage. 3 days ago, he wasn't even breathing. Now ... Claire gestured to where Luna lay, his tiny paw twitching in his sleep. "He's still here, still fighting. People need to see this, need to know that sometimes the impossible is possible." As if on cue, Luna let out a tiny squeak, the first voluntary sound he'd made since his birth. Nova immediately rushed to his side, her tail wagging as she gently nosed her smallest pup. Luna squeaked again, stronger this time, his little paws reaching for his mother's warmth. Sage felt something shift in her chest, a tiny spark of hope igniting into something stronger. Claire was right. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was a story of love, of determination, of beating impossible odds, and maybe, just maybe, sharing it could help others find hope in their own dark moments. With trembling fingers, Sage reached for her phone and opened the camera. Luna had rolled onto his side now, his silvery fur catching the lamplight as Nova tenderly cleaned his face. Despite his twisted legs and tiny size, there was something hauntingly beautiful about him, a fragile strength that seemed to radiate from within. "Okay," Sage whispered, pressing record. "Let me tell you about Luna, the puppy who refused to give up." Her hands were shaking as she uploaded the video late that night, after Claire had finally convinced her to get some rest. She included a simple caption. "This is Luna. The vet said he wouldn't survive the night. That was 3 days ago. Never stop believing in miracles." Sage woke 4 hours later for Luna's feeding to find her phone buzzing non-stop with notifications. The video had exploded overnight, reaching millions of viewers across multiple platforms. Comments flooded in from around the world. "I'm crying at work right now. That little silver puppy is the strongest thing I've ever seen. My daughter has cerebral palsy. We're watching this together, and she says Luna is just like her, different but determined. Please keep updating us. We're all praying for Luna." But as the video went viral, something unexpected happened. People began sharing their own stories of hope and survival against impossible odds. A mother whose premature baby had defied all medical predictions. A cancer survivor who had been given months to live, now 5 years cancer-free. A rescued horse who had learned to walk with prosthetic legs. Luna's story had sparked something in people. A reminder that sometimes the greatest miracles come in the smallest packages. However, with the viral fame came a new set of challenges. News stations began calling, wanting to feature Luna's story. Animal welfare organizations reached out, some offering help, others questioning whether keeping Luna alive was the right thing to do. Sage's small farmhouse became the center of a storm she hadn't anticipated. "I don't know how to handle all this," Sage confided in Claire one morning, a week after the video went viral. She was preparing Luna's formula, her movements now confident after countless feedings. "Some people are saying I'm cruel for not letting him go, that I'm prolonging his suffering for internet fame." Claire, who had taken to spending her nights on Sage's couch to help with the round-the-clock care, watched as Luna attempted to drag himself toward Nova using his front paws. His back legs, though still twisted, had grown stronger, and his determination was evident in every movement. "Look at him, Sage," Claire said softly. "Does he look like he's suffering to you?" Luna had reached Nova and was attempting to nurse on his own for the first time, a milestone Dr. Marcus had thought impossible. Nova lay perfectly still, adjusting her position to make it easier for her smallest pup. The other puppies, now twice Luna's size, gently moved aside to give their tiny brother space. "He's getting stronger every day," Sage said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Last night, he actually barked. It was more like a squeak, but still." Just then, Sage's phone rang. It was Dr. Marcus. His voice was grave when she answered. "Sage, we need to talk about Luna's latest test results," he said without preamble. "I've found something concerning. Can you come to the clinic and bring Luna?" The fear in his voice made Sage's blood run cold. She looked at Luna, now contentedly nursing alongside his siblings, his silver fur glowing in the morning sunlight. He had already overcome so much. What new challenge were they about to face? "Dr. Marcus, please," Sage whispered, her hand clutching the phone. "Just tell me. How bad is it?" The silence on the other end of the line seemed to stretch for eternity before he finally spoke. "It's his heart, Sage. The defect. It's worse than we thought. Without surgery, he won't make it past his first month. And the surgery..." He paused, and Sage could hear him taking a deep breath. "The surgery would cost more than most people make in a year, and even then, the success rate is less than 30%. Sage felt the room spinning. Nova, sensing her distress, left her puppies to press against her leg, whining softly. Luna looked up from nursing, his tiny tail wagging at the sight of his human mother, completely unaware that his fate was hanging in the balance once again. "How ... Sage's voice cracked. "How long does he have without the surgery?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Dr. Marcus's voice was heavy with sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Sage. I know how much you and Nova have already invested in him, but sometimes..." "No," Sage cut him off, her voice suddenly firm. "We didn't come this far to give up now. There has to be a way." She looked at her phone, still flooding with notifications from Luna's viral video, at Claire, who was already pulling out her laptop with determination in her eyes, at Nova, who had refused to give up on her smallest pup from the very beginning, and finally at Luna himself, who had defied every prediction and probability simply by still being alive. "We're going to save him," Sage announced, her voice steady despite the tears running down her face. "Somehow, we're going to find a way, because Luna's story isn't over yet. It's only just beginning." Claire's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard before Sage had even finished speaking. "We need to set up a fundraising page right now. People are already asking in the comments how they can help. Let me handle the social media part. You focus on Luna." What happened next would be called a miracle by some, a testament to human kindness by others. Within hours of Claire posting about Luna's heart condition, the story exploded even further. The local news station that had been calling finally got their story, but not in the way they expected. Instead of sending a reporter, they sent Angela Chen, their veteran anchor, who had lost her own dog to a heart condition the previous year. Angela sat on Sage's living room floor, tears streaming down her face as Luna wobbled over to her on his strengthening legs, his tail wagging with innocent joy. The camera captured everything: his determined struggle to walk, Nova's constant vigilance, and the way Luna's silver fur seemed to glow under the studio lights. "I've covered thousands of stories in my career," Angela said, looking directly into the camera, her voice thick with emotion. "But I've never seen anything like this. This isn't just about saving a puppy. This is about hope, about fighting against impossible odds, about a community coming together to prove that miracles still exist. The segment aired that evening, and the response was instantaneous. The fundraising page crashed multiple times from the traffic. Donations poured in from around the world. $1, $5, whatever people could give. Children broke open their piggy banks. A group of elementary school students held an emergency bake sale. A local artist began selling Luna-inspired paintings, donating all proceeds to the surgery fund. But it wasn't just money that arrived. Cards and letters flooded Sage's mailbox. Packages appeared on her doorstep. Specially formulated puppy milk, heating pads, soft blankets, even a custom-made support harness for Luna's back legs from a veterinary orthopedics company that had seen his story. "Look at this one," Claire said softly, reading from one of the hundreds of letters. "My son was born with a heart defect. The doctors said he wouldn't survive his first week. He's 8 now and plays Little League Baseball. Luna reminds me so much of him. That same fight, that same spirit. Please don't give up. Miracles happen every day." Luna had grown stronger in the days since Dr. Marcus's devastating news. Though still tiny compared to his siblings, he had mastered the art of walking even if his gait was more of a determined wobble. His bark, once barely a squeak, had developed into a distinctive little yip that never failed to make Sage smile, even on the hardest days. But there were hard days. Days when Luna's heart condition would make itself known, when his breathing would become labored and his tiny body would tremble with exhaustion. During these episodes, Nova never left his side. Her body curled protectively around him, her heartbeat steady and strong against his weak one. It was during one of these episodes, exactly 10 days after the fundraising began, that Claire burst into the room with her laptop, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Sage," she whispered, "look." The fundraising page showed a number that made Sage's vision blur with tears. They had not only reached their goal for Luna's surgery, they had exceeded it. Comments and well wishes continued to pour in by the thousands. But just as hope began to soar, Luna collapsed. It happened so suddenly that for a moment, everyone froze. One second he was playing with a soft toy someone had sent him, his silver fur catching the afternoon light, and the next, he was on his side, his tiny body completely still. Nova's howl of distress shattered the silence. She rushed to Luna, nosing him frantically, her cries growing more desperate when he didn't respond. Sage's hands shook as she scooped up his limp form, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear Claire calling Dr. Marcus. "Stay with me, sweet boy," Sage pleaded, cradling Luna close as she ran to her car. "Please stay with me. We're so close. So many people are fighting for you. Don't give up now." But Luna's breathing was shallow and irregular, his heartbeat faint under Sage's trembling fingers. As she sped toward the veterinary clinic, Nova howling in the back seat, Sage realized with crushing clarity that all the money in the world wouldn't matter if Luna couldn't hold on long enough to receive the surgery. The sun was setting as they raced against time, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Luna's tiny body grew cooler in Sage's arms with each passing minute. And somewhere in the growing darkness, a community of thousands held their breath, waiting to hear if their miracle puppy would live to fight another day. Dr. Marcus was already waiting in the parking lot when Sage's car screeched to a halt. He didn't waste time with words, immediately taking Luna's limp form from her trembling arms and rushing inside. Nova tried to follow, her claws scrabbling on the clinic's tile floor, but a technician gently held her back. "I'm sorry," the tech said softly, "but you need to wait here. Dr. Marcus needs space to work." The waiting room became a prison of fear and hope. Minutes stretched into hours as Sage paced, her hands still feeling the phantom weight of Luna's cold body. Nova lay by the exam room door, her eyes never leaving it, letting out small whimpers that broke Sage's heart anew each time. Claire arrived shortly after, having followed in her own car. She took one look at Sage's face and pulled her into a tight hug. "He's going to make it," she whispered fiercely. "He has to." Just then, Sage's phone buzzed. Someone had gone live on social media about seeing Luna being rushed to the vet. Within minutes, the clinic's parking lot began filling with people. They came quietly, respectfully, holding candles and homemade signs. "Fight Luna, fight," read one. "Silver Angel," proclaimed another. The crowd grew as night fell. Children in pajamas clutched stuffed animals. Elderly couples brought chairs and thermoses of coffee. A local food truck arrived, providing free hot chocolate to the vigilant supporters. No one spoke above a whisper, as if loud voices might somehow disturb the delicate battle being waged inside. Hour 3 brought a police officer, concerned about the growing crowd, but after hearing Luna's story, he stayed, directing traffic and helping organize the impromptu vigil. Local news vans appeared, their cameras capturing the unprecedented scene, hundreds of strangers united in hope for a tiny silver puppy. At hour 4, a small girl in unicorn pajamas approached Sage. She couldn't have been more than 6, and in her hands she clutched a worn stuffed dog. "This is Max," she said solemnly, holding out the toy. "He helped me when I was in the hospital. Maybe he can help Luna too." Sage knelt down, tears streaming freely now. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily. I saw Luna on my mom's phone. He's like me. The doctor said I wouldn't make it either, but I did." She pressed the stuffed dog into Sage's hands. "Max is magic. He makes scary things not so scary." Before Sage could respond, the exam room door opened. Dr. Marcus emerged, his scrubs stained and his face etched with exhaustion. The crowd outside pressed closer to the windows, holding their breath. Nova jumped to her feet, her tail rigid with tension. "He's stabilized," Dr. Marcus announced, his voice hoarse. "Barely. His heart. It's worse than we thought. He needs the surgery now. Tonight. We can't wait any longer." "But," Sage's voice cracked, "can he survive it? He's so weak." "I've already contacted Dr. Sarah Williams at the Advanced Veterinary Heart Center in the city. She's the best cardiac surgeon in the state. She saw Luna's story, and she's willing to do the surgery tonight, but we have to move fast. She's preparing her team now." "The city?" Sage's heart sank. "That's 3 hours away." "2 minutes," a deep voice cut in. Everyone turned to see the police officer who had been managing the crowd. "By helicopter. I've already called it in. Medical transport is on the way. This little guy has touched too many hearts for us to lose him now." As if in response to his words, the distant thrum of helicopter blades filled the air. Outside, the crowd began to cheer, their signs and candles waving in the night. Sage looked down at the stuffed dog in her hands, then at the little girl who had gifted it. "Max is going on a trip," she told Lily, her voice thick with emotion. "He's going to help Luna be brave for his surgery." The helicopter landed in the empty lot behind the clinic, its powerful searchlight illuminating the scene like a spotlight from heaven. As the medical team rushed Luna's tiny form to the waiting aircraft, Sage felt a tugging on her sleeve. It was Lily again. "Wait," the little girl said, reaching for Max. She kissed the stuffed dog's worn nose and whispered something to it before handing it back. "I told him to tell Luna that being different just means you're magic, and magic puppies don't give up." The helicopter lifted off into the night sky, carrying with it not just Luna and his medical team, but the hopes and prayers of an entire community. As it disappeared into the darkness, Nova lifted her head and howled, a sound of such pure love and longing that every person present felt it in their soul, and somewhere high above, a tiny silver puppy held on to life, with the same determination that had defined his entire existence. While clutched in his blankets, a well-loved stuffed dog named Max stood guard, carrying the magic of a child's unwavering belief in miracles. The drive to the Advanced Veterinary Heart Center was the longest 3 hours of Sage's life. Claire insisted on driving, knowing her friend was in no state to navigate the dark highways safely. Nova lay in the back seat, unusually quiet, her eyes fixed on the sky as if tracking the helicopter that carried her smallest pup. The police escort, arranged by the same officer who had called in the helicopter, cleared their path through the midnight traffic. Social media exploded with updates. The helicopter's journey was tracked by thousands. News stations interrupted their late-night programming to cover the story. Luna Miracle and Fly Luna Fly trended worldwide. In the city, people lined the streets near the veterinary center, holding up their phones like beacons to light the way. When they finally arrived, Dr. Williams was waiting for them. She was a tall woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, her surgical scrubs already on. "Luna's here," she said softly, leading them to a consultation room. "He's being prepped for surgery now, but before we proceed, you need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." She pulled up Luna's scans on a screen. "His heart condition is one of the most complex I've ever seen. The main vessels are transposed, and there's a hole between the chambers. In a normal-sized puppy, this would be a challenging surgery. In one as small as Luna, she paused, making sure Sage was following. We'll have to use specialized micro-instruments. Some we've had to have custom-made just for this procedure. But you can fix it. Sage's voice trembled. Nova pressed against her leg, whining softly. Dr. Williams' face softened. I've been following Luna's story since the beginning. My daughter showed me that first video you posted, and I've watched every update since. That's why I agreed to do this surgery tonight, even though we usually need days to prepare for something this complex, because I've seen his fight, his spirit. She smiled gently. And sometimes, spirit is the ingredient that tips the balance between possible and impossible. Just then, a nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Williams, we're ready. Sage's heart lurched. This was it. The moment that would determine whether Luna's miracle story would continue or end here in this sterile hospital corridor. Dr. Williams turned to leave, but Sage caught her arm. Wait, she whispered, pulling Max, the stuffed dog, from her bag. Can he go with Luna? A little girl gave him to us. She said he's magic. For a moment, Dr. Williams looked startled. Then her professional demeanor melted into a warm smile. We'll put him right outside the operating room. That way, he can keep watch. The next 8 hours were an eternity compressed into minutes that stretched like years. Sage, Claire, and Nova remained in the waiting room, along with a growing crowd of supporters who had followed them to the city. Local restaurants sent food. Strangers brought blankets and coffee. Children colored pictures for Luna. The walls of the waiting room slowly filled with artwork and messages of hope from around the world. Every hour, a nurse would come with an update. Luna's holding strong. The first repair is complete. Dr. Williams is working on the second vessel now. Each report was immediately shared with the thousands watching online, holding their breath, praying, hoping. At hour 6, Nova suddenly stood, her ears perked forward, her body tense. A moment later, she let out a long, low howl that made everyone in the waiting room freeze. It wasn't a howl of grief or pain. It was something else, something primal and powerful. She knows something, Claire whispered, gripping Sage's hand. Before anyone could respond, Dr. Williams appeared in the doorway, still in her surgical gown. Her face was unreadable as she approached Sage. The surgery is complete, she said quietly. There's no other word for it, but miraculous. Every time we encountered a seemingly impossible obstacle, Luna's little heart found a way to work with us. I've never seen anything like it. Sage could barely breathe. Does that mean... He's alive, Dr. Williams smiled, tears gleaming in her eyes. He's weak, and the next 24 hours are critical. But his heart, it's beating properly for the first time in his life. The waiting room erupted in cheers. Nova barked joyfully, her tail wagging so hard her whole body shook. Claire was already on her phone, sharing the news with the worldwide community that had become part of Luna's extended family. There's something else, Doctor, Williams added, her voice filled with wonder. During the surgery, we discovered why Luna's fur has that unusual silver sheen. He has a rare genetic condition that affects pigmentation. It's harmless, but it's so uncommon that there are only a handful of documented cases worldwide. Your Luna truly is one of a kind, inside and out. Just then, a nurse appeared with Max, the stuffed dog. Around his neck was a surgical mask, and his paw had a tiny IV bandage. Our little patient's guardian did an excellent job, she winked, handing him back to Sage. As the sun began to rise over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope, Sage held Max close and whispered a thank you to Lily, the little girl who believed in magic. Outside the veterinary center, the crowd had grown even larger, their candles now replaced by the warm glow of dawn. They were strangers united by love for a tiny silver puppy who had reminded the world that sometimes the biggest miracles come in the smallest packages. And in the recovery room, under the watchful eyes of his medical team, Luna took his first breaths with his newly repaired heart. Each one stronger than the last, each one a tiny victory in a battle that had brought out the best in humanity. The days following Luna's surgery unfolded like a beautiful dream. With his heart finally working properly, he gained strength at an astonishing rate. The first time Sage was allowed to visit him in recovery, she barely recognized her tiny fighter. His silver fur gleamed with new vitality, and his eyes, once clouded with exhaustion, sparkled with life. "Look at his color," Dr. Williams marveled during a checkup. His body is finally getting all the oxygen it needs. He's literally glowing from the inside out. Nova's reunion with Luna was a moment that reduced everyone in the room to tears. The mother dog approached her smallest pup cautiously at first, sniffing him carefully as if afraid he might break. But Luna, seeing his mother, let out an excited yip and tried to wobble toward her, pulling at his IV lines. "Careful, little one," the nurse laughed, untangling him. "You're still healing." Nova gently nuzzled her pup, her tail wagging as she registered his stronger heartbeat, his warmer body temperature, his increased energy. Luna snuggled into her fur, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath at the pure love between mother and child. But it wasn't just Luna who was healing. His story had sparked something remarkable in the wider world. The veterinary center began receiving letters and emails from parents of children with heart conditions, finding hope in Luna's recovery. Schools used his journey to teach students about empathy and perseverance. A children's book author reached out, wanting to tell Luna's story to inspire young readers. One morning, about a week after the surgery, Sage arrived at the clinic to find Lily, the little girl who had loaned them Max, waiting in the reception area with her mother. The child's eyes were wide with anticipation. "We saw online that Luna's doing better," Lily's mother explained. She couldn't wait to visit him. When Luna was brought out for his daily exercise, wearing a tiny protective vest over his healing chest, Lily gasped in delight. The silver puppy, now noticeably stronger, padded straight to her, his tail wagging. He sniffed at her hand, then gave it a tiny lick that made the little girl giggle. "See, Mommy? I told you he was magic." Lily beamed. "His fur looks like starlight," Luna barked in response. A real bark now, not the weak squeak from before, and carefully placed his paw on Lily's knee. The little girl's mother wiped tears from her eyes as she filmed the interaction. "Lily had her last heart surgery 3 months ago," she told Sage quietly. She was so scared, but following Luna's story, seeing him fight, it gave her courage. She kept saying, "If Luna can do it, I can do it too." The video of Luna and Lily's meeting went viral within hours. Something about the connection between the tiny silver puppy and the brave little girl touched people deeply. Soon, other families began bringing their children to meet Luna, young warriors battling their own health challenges, drawing strength from his resilience. Dr. Williams, watching Luna interact with his visitors, made a surprising suggestion. "Have you considered training him as a therapy dog? Once he's fully recovered, of course. He has a natural empathy that's quite remarkable." Sage looked at her silver puppy, now sitting patiently while a child in a wheelchair showed him her own surgery scar. Luna's tail wagged gently, and he placed his paw on the girl's hand, just as he had done with Lily. The child's face lit up with joy. "He's already doing therapy work, isn't he?" Sage whispered. "He's showing them they're not alone." That evening, as Luna curled up for his nightly rest, with Max the stuffed dog still faithfully by his side, Sage checked her phone to find a message that made her heart skip. It was from a major children's hospital in the city. "We've been following Luna's story," the message read. "Our cardiac ward would love to have him visit once he's stronger. These kids, they need to see that miracles are possible. That being different doesn't mean being less. That sometimes the smallest hearts are the strongest." As if understanding the weight of the moment, Luna lifted his head and let out a soft woof. His silver fur caught the evening light, transforming him into a living beacon of hope. Nova, who had refused to return home without her pup, nuzzled him proudly. Sage looked at her tiny miracle, remembering that terrifying night when he had entered the world, so small and fragile that no one thought he would survive. Now, here he was, not just surviving, but thriving, his very existence touching lives and changing hearts across the world. "You were never meant to just survive, were you?" she whispered to Luna. "You were meant to show us all how to live." 6 months passed like a beautiful dream. Luna grew from a fragile silver puppy into a stunning young dog, smaller than his siblings, but carrying himself with a quiet grace that drew people to him. His silver fur, now thick and lustrous, still caught the light in that magical way that made children gasp and ask if he was made of starlight. Every Wednesday, Luna visited the Children's Hospital cardiac ward. He would pad softly from room to room, somehow knowing exactly who needed him most on any given day. Sometimes he would sit quietly with a child, fresh from surgery, his head resting gently on their bed. Other times, he would play carefully with those who were stronger, his presence encouraging them to move and laugh despite their healing scars. The nurses called him their silver angel. They kept a special bulletin board covered with photos of Luna with his young friends, children who had gone home healthy, inspired by a puppy who had faced the same battles they had. Max, the stuffed dog that had watched over Luna's own surgery, now traveled with him to the hospital, passed from child to child, as a good luck charm for their procedures. One particularly memorable Wednesday, Luna stopped outside a room he had never visited before. Inside, a young boy named Marcus lay curled on his side, refusing to speak to anyone. He had been there for 2 weeks, his heart condition requiring multiple surgeries, but he had shut down, lost hope. "He won't even look at us," the nurse whispered to Sage. "His parents are desperate." Luna walked into the room without hesitation. Instead of jumping up to the bed like he usually did, he lay down on the floor where Marcus could see him and gently pulled his protective vest off with his teeth, something he had never done before. The boy's eyes flickered with interest despite himself. Luna rolled onto his side, exposing his own surgery scar, now covered with silver fur but still visible. For the first time in days, Marcus moved, leaning over to look. "He has a scar like mine," the boy whispered. "He does," Sage said softly. "Would you like to hear his story?" Marcus nodded slightly, and for the next hour, Sage told him about the tiny puppy who wasn't supposed to live, who needed a special heart surgery, who had inspired people around the world. As she spoke, Luna crept closer until he was lying next to Marcus's bed, his warm presence offering silent comfort. "Can I—" Marcus hesitated. "Can I touch his scar?" "Of course." As the boy's fingers gently touched Luna's chest, feeling the strong, steady heartbeat beneath, tears began to fall. "I'm scared," he admitted. "They say I need another surgery." Luna lifted his head and gave Marcus's face a gentle lick, making the boy giggle through his tears. Then, with deliberate care, the silver dog reached over to where Max sat on the bedside table and nudged the stuffed toy toward Marcus. "Would you like to borrow Max for your surgery?" Sage asked. "He's magic, you know. He helped Luna be brave during his operation." For the first time in weeks, Marcus smiled. The nurses in the hallway wiped tears from their eyes as they watched him clutch the worn stuffed dog, finally talking to his parents about his fears, his hopes, his determination to be brave like Luna. That evening, as they left the hospital, Dr. Williams was waiting in the lobby. She had transferred to the Children's Hospital full-time after Luna's surgery, inspired to focus on pediatric cardiac cases. "I just got Marcus's latest tests back," she said, her eyes shining. "He's strong enough for the surgery now. His heart function has actually improved since this morning." She knelt down to scratch Luna's ears. "I can't explain it medically, but somehow you gave him the will to fight again." Luna's story continued to spread, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. A documentary filmmaker captured his hospital visits, showing the world the healing power of love and understanding. Research scientists studied his unique genetic condition, hoping to understand why his silver fur had that startling luminescence. But more importantly, they studied the way he connected with cardiac patients, leading to new research about animal-assisted therapy for children with heart conditions. His siblings, Storm, Thunder, and Rain, had all gone to loving homes, but Luna stayed with Sage and Nova, his destiny clearly tied to his work at the hospital. The once tiny pup, who had nearly died, now carried life and hope wherever he went. 1 year to the day after his surgery, Luna sat beside Sage on a small stage at the Children's Hospital. Before them stood hundreds of people, children he had comforted, families he had touched, medical staff he had inspired. Each person held a small silver bell, a symbol of hope, chosen because it matched Luna's magical fur. As Sage shared Luna's story one more time, the crowd listened in rapt attention. But it was what happened next that brought tears to every eye. One by one, children began to stand. Marcus, now healthy after his successful surgery. Lily, whose own heart was strong and vital. Dozens of others who had found courage in a silver puppy's fight to live. Each child rang their bell, the clear, bright sounds filling the air like music, and as the last bell faded, Luna lifted his head and let out a joyful bark that echoed through the hall. No longer the weak squeak of a dying puppy, but the strong, clear voice of a survivor who had become so much more than anyone could have imagined. 2 years after that celebration, Luna's legacy had grown beyond anything Sage could have dreamed on that terrifying night when he first entered the world. The tiny silver puppy, who wasn't supposed to survive, had inspired a movement of hope that crossed continents and changed countless lives. The children's hospital where Luna worked had established the Silver Heart Program, a revolutionary approach to treating young cardiac patients that combined traditional medical care with emotional and psychological support. Every child in the program received their own silver bell, an especially made stuffed dog modeled after Max, who had become as much a symbol of hope as Luna himself. But perhaps the most beautiful part of Luna's story was how it had rippled outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. Marcus, the boy who had found his courage through Luna, was now a regular visitor to the cardiac ward himself, not as a patient, but as a volunteer, sharing his story with other scared children. He always wore a silver pin on his jacket, a tiny dog that seemed to catch the light just like Luna's fur. Lily, now 10 years old, had written and illustrated a children's book about Luna with help from her mother. The Silver Puppy Who Could became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to help families afford cardiac care for their children. In every pediatric cardiac ward across the country, you could find a copy of her book, its pages worn from countless readings to frighten children before their surgeries. Dr. Williams had gone on to develop new surgical techniques for tiny hearts, inspired by what she had learned operating on Luna. "Sometimes the smallest patients teach us the biggest lessons," she would say at medical conferences, always showing a picture of Luna in her presentations. Nova, now graying around her muzzle but still elegant, had become something of a celebrity herself. Mother and child organizations often invited her and Luna to their events, seeing in their bond a testament to the power of a mother's love and determination. The sight of the large German shepherd still carefully watching over her small silver son never failed to move people to tears. Claire had turned their story into a documentary that won several awards, but more importantly, had raised awareness about both animal and human cardiac care. The footage of Luna's midnight helicopter flight to surgery was now shown in film schools as an example of how to capture genuine human emotion. But the most profound change was in the everyday moments that few people ever saw. Like the night when a desperate mother brought her teenager to the emergency room, the girl's heart failing. As they waited for news, Luna, who had stayed late at the hospital that day for some reason even Sage couldn't explain, padded quietly into their room. The silver dog laid his head in the crying mother's lap, while gently placing his paw on the girl's hand, his presence bringing a peace that no words could provide. Or the morning when a young surgeon, exhausted and discouraged after losing a patient, found Luna sitting outside the operating room. The dog simply leaned against the surgeon's legs until he sank to the floor, finally letting himself grieve. No one questioned why Luna had left his usual ward to come to that particular place, at that particular time. They had learned that he somehow always knew where he was needed most. On a warm spring evening, 3 years to the day after that first viral video, Sage sat on her farmhouse porch watching Luna play with a group of children from the cardiac support group. His silver fur caught the setting sun, creating the illusion of a glowing halo around him. Despite his smaller size, his heart now beat as strongly as any dog's. Stronger, some might say, having been mended by both medical science and an entire world's love. Nova lay nearby, contentedly watching her special son. Storm, thunder, and rain sometimes visited with their new families, but everyone agreed that Luna had been meant for a different path. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was a healer, a hope bringer, a living reminder that sometimes the greatest miracles come in the most unexpected packages. As the children played, their parents sat with Sage, sharing stories of their own journeys. Their silver bells hung from their bags or around their necks, catching the light just like Luna's fur. Each bell represented a battle fought, a victory won, a heart healed. The clear, bright sound of them ringing in the evening breeze had become a symbol of hope in hospitals across the world. Luna paused in his play to look at Sage, his intelligent eyes filled with the same fighting spirit she had seen in him on that first night. But now that spirit was tempered with wisdom, with purpose, with the deep understanding of one who had not only survived against impossible odds, but had helped others do the same. "You know," one of the mothers said softly, watching Luna return to the laughing children, "I used to think it was a coincidence that his fur looks like starlight. But now I think it's a sign. He lights the way for others in their darkest moments." Sage smiled, remembering the tiny pup who had barely been bigger than her palm, who had fought for every breath, whose story had sparked a worldwide chain reaction of love and hope. "I think you're right," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Some souls are just meant to shine." As if in response, Luna let out one of his joyful barks, strong, clear, and full of life. The sound echoed across the farm, carrying with it the message that had become his legacy: that love knows no size, that hope knows no bounds, and that sometimes the smallest hearts prove to be the strongest of all. The silver bells chimed in the evening breeze, their sweet music a reminder that even in our darkest moments, miracles are possible. And somewhere out there, another frightened child was about to discover a story about a tiny silver puppy who refused to give up. A story that would give them the courage to fight one more day, to believe in one